What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Nothing But Skills, and today we're going to be taking a closer look at one of my favorite solo PvE builds for Title Update 4. Now this is my AR build, not using an exotic because I know all of you guys don't have the Eagle Bearer yet. So I'll show you, if you do have the Eagle Bearer, how you can pair it up with this build, but that's not how this build's going to be set up. This build is strictly using a custom P416, as you guys are seeing in the video. Before we get into the build, I just want to say thank you guys again for all the support. Remember, if you guys find this video useful, smash the thumbs up. If you have any questions after you guys watch this video, use the comment section down below. And as always, if you're new to my channel, first time watching a video, hit the subscribe, turn on the notification bell, so when I release a video, you guys get notified. So let's get into the build. Let's break it down. So if we take a look at the weapon is the custom P416. My exotic is the Nemesis, and the specialization I'm running is sharpshooter. I am running this because it does give me that faster reload, and then if I use my Nemesis, I get the extra headshot damage. Now, what I do like about this, guys, what I really do like about this is the fact that this custom P416 is pretty decent, right? Like at 23.2k, that's a lot of damage for a custom P416. I mean, in my opinion, I think it's a lot of damage with the amount of damage to elites you'll see on this build. Now, if you look at my Eagle Bearer, my Eagle Bearer is still a lot more powerful, almost 5k stronger at 28.1. Now, so if you guys do have the Eagle Bearer, instead of running the custom P416 and the Nemesis, I would run the Eagle Bearer as my primary and the custom P416 as my secondary. But that's just for you guys who have the Eagle Bearer, and you'll see the big difference between the builds. Before this build, I have been running the custom P416. It's 23.2k base damage, 825 RPM, 50 round mag. And then look, the talents we have. Preservation. Killing an enemy repairs 10% armor over 5 seconds. Headshot kills improve the repair. So every time you kill an enemy, you get that 10% armor repair over 5 seconds. If you get a headshot kill, it improves the repair. Now, it does require 7 or more offensive. And since I'm running 7, 11, 1, we don't really have to worry about that, right? A leg roll is on here, 10% rate of fire. So that's going to give me that 825 RPM. And then I have greased, while holster weapon swap speed is increased by 10%. That's why if you were running the Eagle Bearer and you are running the custom P416, swapping back and forth would be pretty cool. And if you know you're about to kill an enemy and you finish them off with your custom P416, preservation's always kicking in. But for this build, remember, custom P416 as your primary and the Nemesis as your secondary. Now the way I have this modded is I'm running the C79 scope. That's that 5% damage to elites. Now the reason I choose this one over the 8% hollow sight is because if I run this scope with the Nemesis, I get an additional 25% headshot damage on this build, and I don't have to scope in. Now for the magazine, I am running a 20 round sturdy extended mag. Now this is going to give me negative 10% reload speed, but I can set that off by putting a hand stop with plus 10% reload speed. So we get the negative 10% reload speed on the mag, but on the hand stop we get plus 10% reload speed. And then on the muzzle, I get an additional 5% damage to elites. So just on the rifle itself, that's 10% damage to elites. Now the Nemesis, this is the reason why I'm running it, is because while holster, I gain 25% headshot damage when scoped in with your current weapon. And you don't have to be scoped in, you just have to have a scope on the custom P416. You can't run like the sights. That's why even if you could run 2 exotics, say if I could run the Eagle Bearer and the Nemesis at the same time, the optics row that you have on here, you wouldn't be able to take advantage of the Nemesis. So, but that's why on the custom P416 we run that optics row, that C79 scope. But let's get into the build. The build is what really makes this build. We have 7 offensive, 11 defensive, 1 skill power. You don't need to have that utility mod there. The armor's at 306,000. We have health of 67,000, and then a skill power of 165. Now for the mask, I am running the Murakami mask. This gives me 8% health. This gives me also 8,000 health on the attributes, and then 42% damage to elites. I'm still looking for those god roll damage to elites, trying to get into that 50% range just on the mask. And then of course I get hard hitting, so I get additional 10% damage to elites there. So I'm at 52% damage to elites just on the mask itself. I would like to be around 60% total on the mask. That would be a lot better. So for the chest, I'm running one of my favorite chest pieces, the Run, because Defender's chest piece with certain builds gives you the best talents, right? Because we have that 10% AR damage, right? We have 20,000 armor, almost 20,000 health. We have 12% weapon damage. And I think on this chest piece, every time I try to roll anything higher, I think it caps out at 12.5. So I haven't been using the 14 or 15% weapon damage ones. I hope they change that in the future where when you do roll stuff over, it doesn't cap out. Now, Bloodsucker, one of my favorite PvE and PvP talents, depleting an enemy's armor stacks of 25% bonus armor for 10 seconds. Max stack is 6. This requires 11 more defensive, which I'm at 11, right? And then it also has hard hitting. That's why Fenris is good, because you get those 2 talents. So I get that 10% damage to elites. Plus, I get a defensive system mod, which is going to give me 4k armor, 3% total armor, and then 2,000 armor on kill. Now, if we get into the holster, this is where you guys can change it up a little bit. I am running the Wyvern set because it does give me that crit hit damage. Now, you guys say you're not running a lot of crit chance. I know that, but even just running 15% crit hit chance, I have a chance of hitting it, and having a little bit more crit damage is good. Now, I was running a different one. I was running my Fenris piece that gives me 22k health, but I felt like if I could be a little bit more offensive minded versus defensive minded, having less health doesn't really hurt me too much, right? I'm not losing any armor, I'm just losing health, and I actually gain 4% crit hit chance plus 6% offensive. So if we go to my roll, we're gonna look at this one right here, and look, I have that 15% crit hit chance. I have hard hitting just like I had on the Fenris, but then also I get this offensive mod that's gonna give me 1% weapon damage, 4% AR damage, and 3% marksman rifle damage, which is really good for this build, and that's why that AR hits so good. Now, if we get into the knee pads are probably what you're going to run on most of your builds that go for 11, because Gilligard gives you those 3 defensive rolls. So I have 5% total armor, 20% hazard protection because I am running 2 pieces of Gilligard. I get 15k armor. I have patience. After being in cover for 5 seconds, armor repairs for 5% every 1 second. That's why running patience with this build and pairing that up with the AR talent of preservation, you heal pretty good without running any kind of skill power. So if I drop like the weakest chem launcher, I'm gonna heal pretty quick because if I'm getting kills, preservation's active. If I'm in cover, patience is active. So you pair those up, and that's why you really don't need to have any skill power at all on this build. And then I'm so tanky with 300k, I can survive. Look at this. We also have those 2 defensive mod slots. So I have another system mending. So this gives me 3k armor, 3% total armor, 3% protection from elites. We have another one that gives me 2k armor, 5% total armor, and then 4% explosive resistance. That's why Gilligard is so good to help you hit those high numbers in defensive, because you get those 3 rolls right off the bat on just the knee pads. Now for the gloves, this is where you can change it around a lot. I'm running the second piece of Gilligard. This is giving me 20% hazard protection. It gives me 337 armor regeneration, and then it gives me 8% AR damage. I think the max roll I can roll on this is 10%. So I do have a 12% AR damage, but I don't want to waste it on here to drop down to 10%. So I'm waiting to get a 10% one, and then my damage can go up 2%. So I have hard hitting on here, and this is where I have that utility mod slot with 165 skill power. And then that's really a waste because I'm not really getting enough skill power on this build to benefit from it, right? And the backpack, the Badge of Tough, I feel like this is probably one of the best PvE backpacks you can get. I mean, you could probably find some Gilligard pieces that do just as good, but the fact that you get that 7% damage to elite, so you don't have to worry about finding that roll anywhere else, because you can get hard hitting, so I could gain 3% damage to elites, so it's not a big difference. But usually you get 3 defensive and you can get 1 offensive on these Badge of Toughs. So I got health on here. I got 6.5% total armor. I get armor of 11,000, and then I also get that weapon damage to 8.5%. Now I haven't got anything higher on the backpack, so maybe I can roll this up to maybe like 10%, 11, 12%, wherever it caps me out at, and then this build is going to hit a lot better. Now, what I do like about this backpack is, look, it also gives you offensive mod slots, so I'm gaining an additional 5% damage on here for the AR. So I have 3% AR damage and then 2% weapon damage. So that's why I think these Badge of Tough backpacks are really good. Another backpack you guys can use are these 511 backpacks, but you just have to get the right rolls. Like this one almost had what I needed, but I would rather have hardened on here and then hard hitting and then I probably would be using this one, right? Because if we compare the two, if I had hard hitting on here, I would get 10%, so that would be the 7% I get from Badger Tough. But then also it has a 10% armor, so kind of like the 6.5% total armor, and then it already has an armor and health roll on here. So it's almost just as good, but the one thing I am missing out on is the extra offensive roll. So I'm going to lose out on the offensive roll. I'll just be a little bit more tanky. So that's the difference between the two backpacks. But if you can find a 511 backpack, that's another good backpack you guys can use. I just think these Badger Tough, since they do have that offensive mod slot, it lets you stack a little bit more offensive. Now I just run a basic chem launcher. This gives me what, 50k heals, which isn't too bad. I get 3 shots from that. And then for the hive, nothing special on this one. It's just a regular hive. I do like running the chem launcher in hive if I'm by myself, because if I do go down, it's like that second life, and it drops automatically. You don't have to drop it before you die. So like if you get knocked down, it will automatically drop down on the ground and pick you guys up. So yeah, this is how I run my PvE build. We're gonna go into my stats because I know a lot of you guys like seeing that before we wrap this up. We're running at 23,000 damage, 15.5% crit hit chance, 32% crit hit damage, so I'm getting a little bit more damage there every time I do hit that crit damage. We get 55% headshot damage, plus a 25% from Nemesis, so we're going to be sitting at 80% headshot damage right there. The reload time is 2.2, stability is 30%, and that's from the sharpshooter class. That's why I like running it. Remember, it does give you that target acquisition too. We also have 23.5% all weapon damage, 40% AR damage, and then we have 18% LMG damage, and then I do have 15% rifle damage on this build. But I'm gonna switch, I'm gonna re-roll it and take off the LMG damage when I'm running this build, and you should be stacking into marksman rifle damage. We have that 99% damage to elites, so that's why I'm hitting pretty hard with this build. But yeah, that's how I run my build, guys. This is my solo PvE build. I run this a lot. I even run this in teams. I just think it works really good, and you have that sustain. You don't really have to worry about healing. The 50k heal that you get from the chem launcher is enough to keep me up with patience, preservations, and then bloodsucker. Those 3 talents seem to stack really well together, and I have no problem dropping anything in the open world on challenging missions, on level 4 control points. Everything seems to be pretty easy. Now, if you guys want to tweak this build, remember, go ahead. This is a blueprint for you guys to work off of. Thank you guys again for all the supports. Any questions, use the comment section down below. And if I don't see you in the dark zone, if I don't see you in conflict, it's only a matter of time, boys. Nothing but skills is out.